Hi there, it looks like we're live. Welcome to the Bradley J. Show. There's a big show coming up, an event that you can go to. I know that since pandemic, you haven't been getting out enough, and this is an opportunity to do that. First, let me tell you about the event, and then we'll introduce the guest, our wonderful guest. The Emerge Contemporary Art organization is gearing up to celebrate its 15th anniversary, and as a result, there are going to be 50 Boston artists, Boston's most exciting and most emerging artists. And one of those artists is with us today, and that would be Parker Lilly. You can see one of her pieces in the background. And Parker Lilly comes to me by way of the organizer of this, Ruthie Treadwell, who has gone to great lengths to put this all together. It is a huge undertaking, huge, and it's coming all together on Sunday. And as I understand it, Parker Lilly, the reason that Ruthie Treadwell put this together is it became apparent to her that students from art school graduate without a lot of the important skills that would allow them to make a living at their art. For example, the students didn't know, how much should I charge? How do you decide how much to charge for your painting? How do you market your paintings? How do you make a living at this? There's a lot that art school didn't teach, and this is kind of a real world experience for them, getting folks in catalogs, etc. So we're going to talk about that process and about this event and about Parker Lilly. So Parker, I guess, give me a little background on you, just personally, not artistically necessarily, but let's get to know you a little bit before I pick your brain on the art.
Yeah, sounds good. So, hi,
Hi.
I'm Parker Lilly. I'm a 21-year-old artist. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, great city, by two artist parents, so very chaotic and fun household. Um, and I've been living in Boston for the last 4 lovely years. I went to School of Museum of Fine Arts here, and I graduated this spring. And yeah, so now I'm all out and free.
How did
Yeah.
the pandemic make your experience different as far as actual creation of art? Obviously, it was
Mm,
a bummer having to wear a mask and be isolated a lot. But
mm.
did your did your actual art production, was it different because of the pandemic? Was it
Hmm.
Did you have different materials you had to work with or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say that it was different, but I wouldn't necessarily say that in terms of art, it was like more negative. Um, I did have to, during when the pandemic first hit, I did have to go back to Toronto, but I was used to making art in my small bedroom there. So I was making sort of similar stuff, oil painting, which is not necessarily healthy. Don't recommend oil painting in your bedroom, but I did do it. Um, and yeah, when I came back to Boston and everything was still online in school, my school provided studios for us, so my art didn't change that much. I actually just had a lot more time because there was nothing else to do. So I did end up making a lot of work during the pandemic. Yeah.
Good. And you had the situation where both your parents were artists. Sometimes kids don't want to do what their parents did. Was there a while where you did not want to do that and you wanted to break away and create your own identity? Which,
Yeah.
or did you always want to be an artist like a mom and dad, or dad and dad, or
Yeah.
mom and mom?
Mom and dad. Yeah, not my parents were not they were not pushing really the art agenda in terms of a career. I think they were actually really hoping that they'd like pop out and a lawyer and have something else, but it ended up that both me and my brother are artists, so they failed at doing that. Um but I did growing up, I it wasn't really that my parents were forcing me to like be in art at all. It was just sort of the way that it was kind of the way that they approached everything was just sort of through a creative lens. So I was always just creative as default. And I growing up, I wanted to be an actress. Actually, I had a really strange experience because when I was around 10, I think, I asked my parents if I could audition for this small art school for middle school, which is such a like big city type of thing to have an arts middle school. So I went to arts middle school and arts high school. So I've been in the art education for my whole life, basically. And I wanted to be an actress, but when I was in high school, I ended up switching to the art program. Just because I don't know, when I got older, I became a lot more not self-conscious, but there was something about acting that it just it did not come naturally to me anymore. So then I switched to art and honestly have not doubted that since. So yeah, I tried to go my separate way, but it didn't work.
So you've been in art, surrounded by art all your life, but
Yeah.
still finding your own voice and your own
Mhm,
identity. That's that sentence that everyone needs in my business and your business. Oh,
mhm,
Parker Lilly, she's the artist that bleep bleep bleep. You know, is it
yeah.
difficult to find that slogan, that slug line, that identity?
You know, it is really difficult, and I think that it's a lot. I think it's getting definitely harder. I mean, of course, I'm the social media generation, and there's the art world functions really differently, I think, because I can see the art world function from my phone, which is an experience that a lot of artists pre social media didn't have. So I think in a lot of ways that's super connecting, and I can easily find and talk to people from all over. It doesn't just have to be the small community that I'm around. But in a lot of ways, in terms of finding my identity, my own individual voice, I think that that is really hard, because as soon as you think that you are individual and that you're making work that is different from what you're seeing around you, there's often experiences of going on, like looking through gallery websites or just looking on online to see different artists, and you see someone that's doing like just what you were looking to do. So I think carving out your own identity in the art world is something that is super hard to navigate. And it also comes with branding, which is something that I've definitely talked to Ruthie about, and something that is really difficult to navigate as a young artist, but it's so important. It's kind of everything, you know, you do need to brand yourself.
So you mentioned Ruthie, and let's get to the event a little bit, and then we'll get
Hmm.
back to your personal situation. So it's the Emerge Contemporary Art event, and it's this Sunday. And what are the hours of it?
It is 6 to 10 p.m., I
Okay,
believe.
6 to
Yeah.
10. And it's at the Institute of Contemporary Art. Where
Yeah.
is that? Over in the waterfront
It's
area?
yeah, Seaport. Hmm.
Seaport area. You're going to have to look it up, folks. I don't know the actual address, but that's no problem. ICA Institute of
Yeah.
Contemporary Art. I know you can get there on public transportation. That's how
Yep.
I will get there, probably.
Same.
And my description of the genesis of the event is pretty accurate, right? Why Ruthie goes through this to do
Uh-huh.
this. She really saw a problem with students not being able, not knowing about branding, marketing, pricing, all kinds of stuff. Didn't know this,
Mhm.
what you needed, what need to know to make it. By the way, a little bit about Ruthie herself. She was involved. Well, I don't want to just focus on the Warhol thing, but she was involved heavily in art and the big name and people who are making a lot of money, really famous people in the art world. She was surrounded by that, saw how it worked, and
Mhm.
then when she would see students not having any clue how it worked, she felt like that was a place where she could make a difference, and that's what she does. Am I pretty accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
Uh,
she talked to me. I met her at my school actually, at a portfolio day. We had the same conversation about,
Okay,
yeah.
so what have you learned? I mean, you're a person who's pretty advanced. You had parents who were in the biz, and you have been in art a long time.
Mhm.
But even so, maybe you learned something or are learning something from this. What have you learned? What different things have happened to you? Like you may have been in a catalog before. Tell me some of the benefits and
Mhm.
things that go on through your involvement through this Emerge Contemporary Art event.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of benefits. I think that although I've been surrounded by art my whole life, I definitely feel what a lot of emerging and young artists feel in terms of really having a hard time figuring out how to be taken seriously in the art world and how to sort of navigate shows where you're working with and for and alongside established artists. So one thing that the Emerge show is really helping with is that in the application for the show, it's really important to figure out how you're going to again, brand your portfolio and create a statement that works with all of your works. And also, she's urging you to figure out how to price your work, which is really important. And that's not, there's no class in art, in my education at least, that taught you about pricing, and about how to create like a cohesive portfolio, how to, eliminate some works that aren't working with your statement and really push others and highlight them. So that's really helpful. And then it's also just super beneficial to be able to work, like at this scale. And especially for me, I've been going to the ICA since the first month I've moved to Boston, to work and to show like at a museum is really, really exciting. It's something that a lot of young emerging artists don't have access to at all. And it's really helpful because I've worked for established artists before, and I've had professors that are super established artists. But to be in this type of show is really helpful. Yeah,
It's hard to
it's
get a
great
gig unless
connection.
you've had a gig. It's hard to get a show unless you.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
hard to get a
catch
radio
22.
show. Hard to get a radio
It,
show unless you've had a radio show. Hard to get in an art show unless you've been
yeah,
in an art show. So this is a super resume builder, and
it is. Yeah.
the whole thing helps you define your brand, as you say,
Hmm.
is to learn how to pull together a cohesive body of pieces to put in a show, so that there's and it teaches you about the most basic thing as such a thing as the artist statement. Like,
Yeah.
tell me about an artist statement. A lot of young folks don't have one, and I think Ruthie was like shocked about that. Like, who are you? What do you do? What do you think? What is your statement?
Absolutely. Yeah, the artist statement is super important, but it's also something that I think a lot of art students dread writing. And I think a lot of artists actually dread writing it as well, because it's supposed to be very short, and you introduce yourself, you describe sort of visually, you want the reader to get a sense of what your art looks like visually just from the words that you're saying in your artist statement. So you want
Right.
to, yeah, you want to describe your work, and then you want to talk about sort of where you're accessing it from the, the conceptual side of things, but not too, like, it shouldn't be too personal. You're not supposed to talk about specific experiences in it. It's more general. So that's a really hard thing to navigate, again, because a lot of artists, they make each piece is talking about a different thing, or they're thinking about something, or they're exploring something different. So to really think about like, why am I doing the things that I'm doing generally, is sometimes really hard, but it's really important. I understand why it's important, because you want to get a sense of someone's art from a quick statement, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be a whole
and
essay.
and and you want to give someone an idea of what they'll be seeing and what it means when they see it, and
Yeah,
potentially, if I buy something, who am I buying? Not just what am I buying,
yeah,
who am I buying?
yeah, absolutely. It's definitely important for that, because yeah, you don't want to have a piece of art on your wall for the rest of time, and the statement is something that you are like completely confused by, or you don't understand, or it's like, you know you want to agree with that as well.
Must be hard not to be cliche. I read millions and
Yeah.
millions of band bios, and they're so dumb. They're so cliche. They use the same old burned out phrases over and over. And it must be hard
Yeah.
to have, you've probably read a lot of artist statements, and you must see the same dumb cliches, and it must be
Mhm.
difficult to avoid that.
Oh, it definitely is. And I got advice from a professor recently who said, look through like 100 artist statements in like an artist magazine, and think about what's standing out to you. Like, what do you actually remember? Because you can read a ton of them and you don't remember a single thing about it, because we're just using sort of the same recycled jargon often. And sometimes it's also kind of boring. And some artists will like really go out there with their statement, and then it suddenly sticks in your mind. So yeah, that's definitely something that I want to do. I definitely find it hard to. I mean, I'm not a writer, so that part of the art world is definitely difficult for me, but it's really important. So I do it because of that.
Let's talk a little bit more about the event. So, what I
Hmm.
want to have people be able to picture in their mind what it would be like when they go, kind of an event statement. So, this is from the official press release. I'm going to read it. I'll be honest. I'm going to read it just very briefly. The Emerge event will be showcasing talent of 50 of Boston's rising emerging artists on the verge of their professional careers. The event will feature more than 200 works of art showcasing various artistic disciplines spanning painting, sculpture, videography, performance art, fashion design, music, and everything in between. Music, how does that work? Is it somebody performing?
I actually am not sure about that. I know that I think Ruthie has worked with performers before. I know that there is a fashion show element to this, so I'm wondering if the music is engaged with that.
Okay. And it says 50 artists had work accepted into the juried show from over 200 applicants. What's juried show mean? People decide whether you're in or not?
Yeah, it means that it's a show. It was decided by multiple jury members.
Okay.
So yeah.
37 of the artists accepted are students and recent graduates at Tufts University SMFA. Other artists include people from Mass Art, Leslie, RISD, Parsons, UNH. I went to UNH for what that's worth. Harvard and Berklee College of Music. I'm interested about the music part, how that's going to work out. So it seems, folks, like super fun time. They're going to be the stuff to eat, creative hors d'oeuvres, tapa, wine, craft cocktails to celebrate Emerge's contribution of creative inspiration and ingenuity. It sounds like a really cool event to me.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
And a part of this, you got to, or you had to, both, get it together so you could have your pieces in a catalog. That's a big deal, right? Being in a catalog. What did you learn from that process?
Well, I mean, in order to be in a catalog, one thing that's really important that I think a lot of young artists also struggle with is that you need amazing documentation of your work. You know, you don't want to look through a book and you see something that's blurry or pixelated. You want your work to also look like it does, as close to real life as possible. So it's kind of a different process than if you're putting your work in a show. You need to make sure that it looks good in press. And it's also it's an amazing opportunity to have your work in a catalog because it's something that you can physically have, and that often catalogs are online, so people can constantly reference it. So it's not just a one-off event that no one sees. There's like some record of it, which is really important.
So know a little more about you. Give us an idea of your artist statement.
So my art for the past, I guess in order to do that, I feel like I need to give somewhat of a little background of my work. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. So I came from high school, from being in an art school to college, I came into college working heavy into realism. So hyper realism, oil paintings, photorealism, and everything that I've done, honestly, in all of my work is figurative. I love engaging with humans and painting humans, and I think it's really fascinating. But I started to feel like when I was in college that I was really limited by painting so realistically, and that I wanted to display like a different set of emotions that I just couldn't access through this like rigid way of working. So I stepped away from painting for a while, and I started to really work on taking more interesting photos and also experimenting with different photography techniques, like photo emulsions and manipulating photographs and playing with distortion and such. And at the same time, I was really interested in, I grew up with a mother who is a huge lover of Carl Jung and his theories about the archetypes of the unconscious and dream language. And I was actually, when I was younger, I was in a women's group with a bunch of 50 to 60-year-old women. It was just me in this group. And so I had like a really deep interest in this realm of the unconscious, and I was thinking about how I can display this sort of otherworldly language that comes from internal experiences or how our body reacts to our external environment instead of just displaying our external environment, if that makes sense. So I was reading a lot of stuff in that realm. So then when I entered back into the painting space, I started to work with these stranger, sort of more distorted imagery. And I was thinking a lot about different archetypes and different like emotional states of being, and how that becomes illustrated through a portrait and through the skin. So yeah, kind of abstract stuff. But that's some of what I've been working with. And then in the past few years, I've also been really interested in engaging with new media. I've been working at a digital fabrication studio for a while, and I got really interested in how our new relationship to machines, and for me particularly, laser engraving, and laser cutters. So these like really industrial machines can influence sort of the realm of painting. So I started to work with these like new technologies and also see how that can complicate this sort of portrait, and this image of a person.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a little bit of background.
good. Thank you. So you mentioned machines,
Yeah.
and this has popped up in my conversations about AI.
Hmm.
I wrote the question down because I wanted to ask it exactly. At what point does the machine involvement in art make it not art? Or is there a point where that happens? Does there need to be some human involvement in making the art or conceiving the art? Either deciding on what it's going to look like or actually making it? Does there need to be some human involvement? If there's no human involvement in the making or the conception, is it art? Can a machine who learns on its own conceive of something and make it with no input from a human being and it be art? Of course, this is all in the definition. Art can be whatever you define it, but how do you want to define it? Do you want to say, you seem like you're into machines, maybe you would say, yeah, if a machine conceives of something because it's learned on its own and gone way beyond what a human has inputted there, and then goes on to create that, make it, that it's still art or not. I mean, that's kind of sad, you know.
Yeah.
But I suppose we got to figure it out, and you seem like a qualified person.
Yeah, I think about this all the time. So I have many thoughts. So first of all, I think that when I think about the when I think about the labor of the machine, I also think about how that's tied to the labor of a human, and I think that it's different when we talk about AI. But let's first talk about machine use in making art. So, for example, the machine that I work with often for my art process is a laser cutter. So that is a machine that's programmed by me to burn off different layers of wood, and I have a hand in every part of that process. So without my knowledge and training on this machine, and then also an experience of um, how the different like settings that I use, um, I couldn't make this image. And in order to make the work that I make, I also at every layer, I have to sort of program the machine for the different speeds and powers. So it's not something that could be done at all on its own with the machine. And you also couldn't set it to one speed and one power. It's sort of like a give and take with like each process I go back in and I reset it. And it's also not something that I could really pass off to another person, unless I really train them on my practice and the way that I use it very specifically. So it's interesting that way because I am using a machine, but there's there's no way to really get the my labor and my hand out of it. Um, and I think about it as well. You know, we use machines all the time, like even industrial, like jacquard looms. Artists use that. Sewing machines. I mean, we're constantly using these other materials.
Well, right. So even a paintbrush is a machine, a type of
Yeah, a
machine.
mechanical pencil. Yeah, it's yeah.
So I get that. But the very machine, let's say the laser device you used, at some point will be able to learn, or they will be able to make machines like yours that will be able to
Mhm,
learn.
mhm,
They will probably even get somehow be able to sense positive reinforcement the same way an algorithm, on social media gets positive reinforcement from the length of time you watch it to the number of
Yeah.
times you click on that thing. Like a machine might say, "Oh, well, this person put these settings here a lot. They must like this. This must be good." And so they could learn a bunch of what's good, and someday, some night on its own, just make something on its own. If it
Yeah.
did that, if it just made something on its own with no direction from anybody, would that be art?
My personal opinion is no. And I think we think about this a lot right now, in terms of AI, because if I am typing in just a prompt into, so text to image AI, if I'm typing in a prompt and that's coming out with an AI image, I don't see that image, that as the final product, as a piece that I could submit to a gallery to show. It doesn't have the human hand in it. But I do think artists are working with AI in interesting ways. I'm going to talk about specifically fine artists. I have two parents that are illustrators, mainly, and AI is completely knocking out illustration, which is, yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But in terms of fine art, I think that some artists are working with AI in interesting ways because they're using it to generate a response, and then they're sort of appropriating that response, and manipulating it more, or playing with like the limits of the machine. But when we do this, of course, we are making it smarter. So yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, but I don't think that initial like product is a piece of art. But I also wonder about, I mean, there's a ton of artists that don't have a hand in the production of their work. And I think that there's also some like commodity fetishism in the way that we view art, that there's sort of this idea that an artist's ideas sort of just emerge from their mind in this sort of divine way, and it comes from like pencil to paper, and then this piece is produced. And often I think that there's a lot of labor behind the scenes that a lot of super established artists aren't actually having a hand in, but that is still their work. So it gets kind of muddy there, even without machines.
One thing that's really a problem is credibility. I know that when
Mhm.
I look at a lot of photos, they say the camera doesn't lie. The camera, firstly, has always lied because it eliminates the context. You have no idea what's going on the outside the edge there. It eliminates the
Yeah.
context. But now it really, really super lies. There are these photos of awesome nature. I don't
Yeah.
know if they're real.
Yeah.
I can't tell. Those colors don't look real.
Mhm.
They look so amazing, and I'm supposed to believe these are amazing. I don't. I don't believe and nobody does. I hope a large part of what they see, and
Mhm.
that if it comes to a point where people can't tell easily without a lot of research, if this thing was completely machine made, I mean, we're not at that point yet, but someday we will
Mhm.
be, or a human made it, then even the stuff made by a human is going to suffer because they don't know.
Yeah,
They're not
that
going to
is
believe
very
it. So
true.
they're going to say, I don't know. I'm not
Mhm.
going to get all wound up about this. I don't even know if it's real. I'm just going to kind of dismiss it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these things are seen like digitally. I think we're still not at the point where um works of art, I think that as an artist and a lover of art, I think that works have a presence to them. And when you stand in front of an actual, like if I'm in front of this painting right now, I can feel that this has like a materiality, it's an object, it becomes like its own sort of self. And that AI's images and the way that it's working right now is affecting us in the digital sphere. But I could definitely see that affecting us more physically in the future, which is a scary thing as artists. But
So,
I think that it's affecting a lot of artists that are working with like larger corporations, illustrators. I think that that's where AI is really hitting hard.
and maybe it'll just become a supply and demand thing. Maybe people won't want machine made stuff. And the more you'll have to
Yeah.
have certification. The more handmade it is, the more it's worth. You have to
Hmm.
certify and be able to prove and not lie and have some organization that certifies it somehow. 100% handmade.
Yeah, I think that there's sort of a slingshot effect with like when we're entering into this more digital, less handmade work. I think that there's going to be also a resurgence of really a respect for things that are like handmade. And I've already seen in applying for shows and different events, I've already seen that you are not allowed to use AI in works. That
Ah,
there are ways to verify it, and they are, you know, they are trying to really crack down on that. So in the art world, it's something that can be used as a tool, and I think it could be a very interesting tool, but I don't think it can be a final product, and I don't think people are viewing it as a final product in the gallery setting.
okay.
Yeah.
One more time. This is Parker Lilly. She's one of the 50 emerging artists that are going to be at this wonderful event at the ICA. It is called the Emerge Contemporary Art Event. And there are going to be 50 artists and some refreshments and hors d'oeuvres, tapa, and cocktails, etc. It's one of those things, kind of a fun, fancy, wonderful, casual thing. And I'm going to be there. If you, a lot of folks say, Bradley J, where are you going to be? Well, I'm going to be there on Sunday at 6 to 10. I hope, if I'm wrong, somebody correct me, but you confirm it's 6 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's the and there you go. I don't want to be redundant. I'll ask you one more question, which
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even mentioned to you before. Give me an example of work that was most, just when you stood in front of it, was most moving. I don't like the word they use,
Ooh.
moving, but just like, whoa. There's only
Mm.
one painting that really knocked me down. You go see, you appreciate them, like, that's amazing. Look at that. That's a talent. But the most viscerally impactful, that's the word I'll use, was
Mm-hmm.
is it Guernica in Madrid? The Picasso painting.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man,
Was that
it's
for
something
you?
it's huge, and it's just a shocker for me. I'm sure that's not the case with everybody. How about you?
Yeah.
Viscerally
Yeah.
impactful.
So the first thing I thought of when you said this was the artist Anselm Kiefer, who I believe is a German artist. Um, there is a piece at the Met in New York, and I can't remember its name, but his work is absolutely, it's, I have no words to fully describe it. Um, it his work is huge, and as an artist standing in front of it, I think it was this piece that had these like growing, it was this landscape, and it had these sort of shriveled up like flowers and a lot of like dead materials in it. And if you look up his work, you'll see that it's a common motif for him. um, and it was thick. You could tell that the painting had been made over years and years and years, and that's always fascinating to me as an artist. It was thick. It almost took on a completely like a completely different body of its own. I felt like it had legs in some ways, and yeah, that piece I stood in front of for a very long time. It did make me emotional, but all of his work that I've seen, I've absolutely loved. Um, so yeah, I would urge you to look him up. He's amazing.
Can you spell it? Tell me the name again.
So it's Anselm Kiefer. So it's Anselm Kiefer,
Okay.
question mark, I think. Yeah.
All right, Parker Lilly, thank you very much. Looking forward to meeting you in person at the event, and
Yeah.
anyone else who wants to come. This is a big deal. It's something fun to do. You don't get the chance to do this kind of stuff very much, and a lot of work goes into it from a lot of people, and they would really appreciate it if you went. But most of all, you will walk away saying, "Man, that was different. That was fun." Parker Lilly, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Anybody, if you know of anybody that you think would dig this event, share this with them. Okay. All right. There we go. I'm going to end this now. 3.